Now, welcome. We're talking Gaelic football. We are at the finale to the league proper this weekend, and there's a huge amount to play for across the board in all four divisions. It's very, very tight. So much to discuss. The league, I was thinking of a new marketing campaign. It's Jim McGuinness inspired, but I think it's perfect. The Alliance Football League, not that bothered. No, it's not bothered. It's not that bothered, which is what Jim McGuinness said about making a final. We're not that bothered. Does Jim McGuinness tell the truth when he says, not that bothered, Frank? We're not that bothered.
I was there when he said it last Sunday, but it didn't strike me as one of those, I definitely don't want to reach a league final. It was, we've had a very good league campaign so far. I'm not overly happy with how we lost the game here today. Certain things we could have done a lot better, but I'm not going to be too disheartened. And then he was asked, well, you know, a league final. He says, look, if we get there, we get there. I'm not too bothered. We'll have 5 weeks to down. If we get to a league final, we have a week less. Like, it was that, you know. But it's never been, I don't think, a Jim McGuinness priority. Like, he's qualified for a few Division 2 finals back in the day, and Donegal, I think they might have won one of them. Maybe they won both. I can't even remember. But I mean, it never felt like this is Donegal going for glory in Croke Park. I still think he should want to get to this one. I think he probably does want to get one. It's no harm having a match 4 weeks out rather than waiting 5 weeks. But I suppose then the interesting thing is whether it turns out to be Kerry and the whole narrative that will build up around a Croke Park final involving Donegal, Kerry, Paddy Clifford and all the rest.
Jack O'Connor was equally non-committal to wanting to be in a final, though, to be fair. McGuinness isn't alone.
But I think with McGuinness, like in the past, there have been situations. I remember one of those Division 2 finals was against Monaghan and they were playing the Ulster Championship maybe even 7 days later. So, you know, clearly there's an aspect to this that, if anything, and like McGuinness's record in the Ulster Championship was absolutely phenomenal. Like, I don't think it gets spoken about enough across his 2 stints. So I think if it was any way sort of detracting from their, you know, ability to be totally fresh for the first round of the Ulster Championship, I could understand why he might be ambivalent about it. Yeah. But this year it's no threat whatsoever.
So. 26th of April, Letterkenny is the down match. So it's, you know, as Frank says, 4 weeks might be even better than 5. The table, just to rehash your memories, is Donegal and Kerry are on 9 points, but it's all very tight. Mayo 8, Roscommon 8, and then you're into the relegation end of Galway, Armagh, Dublin, 6, 4 and 4, hoping to avoid joining Monaghan. So wide open again. Donegal have Monaghan and Kerry are away to Armagh, which is maybe the more interesting one. What about Kerry? Are they in the mood to make a final?
Well, when the team is named, or the squad is named, tomorrow night, Friday night, Kerry usually put out their squad. All eyes will be on the full forward line, and if a certain name is not there, it will filter down to the subs to see, is David Clifford part of the 26-strong squad? And if he is, I think you'll be able to gauge the temperature in Kerry towards and the mood towards a league final. I would have thought at the outset that David Clifford would not travel north for either of the 2 games. And that word was certainly circulating around Kerry that, you know, they won't be too hard on him. And he missed
He's not crossing time zones.
He missed the Donegal.
He
missed the Donegal game.
Wait, does he not do more than 2 hours? Is that the job?
Well, I think it's probably the challenge that Donegal, the perceived challenge, and, you know, the risk of injury, and just lighten his load. Now, I think he'd be playing. Personally, I think he'd be there once Kerry are within shot of a league final. I think it'll be all systems go. There's absolutely no reason that I can see why Kerry would stall or stutter or not give themselves the best chance at this stage, because they are the All-Ireland champions, they are the league champions, they are on last year's championship form, way ahead of everybody else. So what would they have to fear? Again, that was the word going around as to whether Clifford would play the away games. But I expect him to be there. He was actually, the last time I was looking back at it, when Kerry played up there in 2022, before they won that All-Ireland title, he wasn't named to go and play in Armagh, but he went. He came on at half time and he turned the game with a goal and a few other things he did. And Kerry went on to the All Ireland, or to the league, and won the All Ireland. So he has played there before. If you remember last year, he went to Tyrone in his first start last year. Game was moved to Pomeroy, and he scored a hat trick on one of the windiest days. So there's no fear of him going up. He'll whatever moves him, he'll take it on. It's just how many games they want to put into him at this stage of the season.
He's played a lot of football, to be fair. Under Jack O'Connor, Frank Kerry won the league in 25, won the All Ireland, won the league in 22, won the All Ireland, won the league in 09, won the All Ireland, the league in 06, won the All Ireland, the league in 04, won the All Ireland. Now, can you spot the pattern there?
Well, when it comes to Kerry and Jack O'Connor, winning leagues does not seriously damage your championship health. I mean, you could take the example a couple of years ago, where Mayo won the league. Was it in McStay's first year? But they were playing Roscommon a week later, and it was a classic. Mayo set themselves up for this ambush on a horrible wet day in
and it also happened in 2019 for Mayo, when James Horn's first year back. They won the league title, beat Kerry, and went out against Roscommon again a few weeks later and lost. And there's a history and a habit of that.
But like the thing is here, like Kerry don't have to worry about a first round match a week later or 2 weeks later, that it's a genuine banana skin. Yeah. That doesn't happen, or it hasn't happened for quite a while with Kerry.
Clare and Ennis, April 25th.
Yeah, I think you get the impression with Kerry that they don't set out in January going gung-ho, we're going to get to a league final. And they get through the first few league rounds, and they could potentially lose a match here or draw a match and not play that well. And then they just kind of hit a vein of form and they get to the league final. Actually, very like probably Dublin under Jim Gavin, where oftentimes in the first 2 or 3 league rounds is where they were most vulnerable. But back then it was after Paddy's Day, they'd hit a vein of form and they might sneak into a league semi-final when they had them, and they'd go and win the league. Like they won, I think, was it 4 in a row or something back then. So Kerry they'll take Sunday's game on its merits. I mean, I still think it's a pretty difficult testing game because Armagh have to get a result. They haven't been winning matches. They did last weekend, but they've actually been performing quite well for spells of all those games. So depending on what Kerry bring to the table, I think it could be a very, very good game.
Okay. On Kerry, people would have seen them against Mayo, I suspect, which finished 229 to 19 points. Sean O'Shea, 11 points. 2 2-pointers in there. David Clifford, 8 points. They... from about, what was it, the 18th, 19th minute until just before half time, they took over and scored 8-9 scores in a row. I didn't see this game, but reading about it, it was almost like billed as kind of one, a lesson in attacking play, and secondly, David Clifford just nodding over to Kobe saying, look, there are levels here and you'll get there, I'm sure, but there are levels. So this was written about certainly as a back in your box kind of Kerry performance. I don't know.
It was a bit. And the other thing, like it's like since the All Ireland final last year and all the talk about the best way to defend against Kerry under the rules as they are now. I mean, Mayo went for it, like they went to go man to man, and Kerry just totally picked them apart. And like the huge conversion rate was 23 scores off 24 shots. Like that's partly got to do with how accurate the Kerry forwards are, but it's also got to do with how easy they made it look. You know, they opened gaps, they put fellas into space, and they were launching over points. So I think there was a lot of different factors going into that game, which weren't just about how good Kerry were, albeit they were exceptional. And like against the wind, with the wind, they were brilliant in both directions, and that's a big thing that you see coming on stream this year in the league. Like it's such a game of two halves now, Gaelic football, and you can see the teams are really good at keeping possession. The day that Donegal played Kerry up there, you were there, was it in Ballyshannon, and I think Donegal only had 2 turnovers the whole game, nearly. And the night against Dublin and Croke Park as well, Donegal were excellent against the wind in just keeping the ball and being able to kind of shuffle it around between them without any fear of coughing the ball up. And that's a big skill now in Gaelic football, when there's a wind, being able to get possession of the ball and keep it before you take your shot, because you're doing yourself sort of great harm by trying to rattle off a shot too quickly when you're against the wind, because inevitably the opposition are going to get a scoring chance off the next play.
It's interesting, actually, on that point, Jim McGuinness, that was one of the issues he brought up that Donegal got wrong, he felt, in Hyde Park last Sunday that they were too aggressive against the wind. And when I say wind, we're talking about gale force. It was biblical, the weather in Roscommon. At one stage, the goalposts were swaying, and you think, are they going to stay up? But they kept the ball. They played keep ball for the first few minutes of the game and did it very well. But as the half progressed and Roscommon started putting pressure on their kick out, he felt Donegal were almost rushing things. They were trying to create chances instead of just killing the clock. And maybe that half explains or partly explains why they suffered their first defeat.
Could we draw up a table, Frank, of the strongest winds in all the inter-county grounds? I presume Pierce Stadium is still up there.
Undisputed, 5 in a row.
I think it is, isn't it? But they nearly all have it at this stage.
They are, yeah.
What jumped out at me with that Kerry and Mayo game, watching it, was just I won't say the ease, but the effortless. It was just so. The way Sean O'Shea and David Clifford dictated that game struck me as two players now, 26 and 27, being at the peak of their powers. This is into their 9th season. They both made their debut against Donegal back in for the 2018 league. And it's just they were bosses. They were in command against this Mayo team. They've been in command. Sean O'Shea, even that game in Donegal in Ballyshannon, while Donegal were dominant and won well, it was the ferocity and the fight that Sean O'Shea brought in the second half to bring Donegal back in. And he's been bringing that throughout this league. And it was just, there were two players, they were at their ease. They were just, whatever it was, David Clifford was playing other players in for scores that he could have easily gone on himself and taken. But he was bringing Keith Evans in. He put the goal on a plate for Dylan Ganey. Still a difficult shot to convert. But they just struck me as two players now at the peak of their maturity as Gaelic footballers. And that's going to be very, very hard for everybody to dislodge in the months ahead.
Yeah, that's why I think, back to the question about how you defend against them, I think there will be a certain amount of the game plans that managers are coming up with, which will come to the conclusion, well, the best thing we can actually do is just keep the ball away from them. You know, like if we kill 3 minutes of this half before we generate a scoring chance, that's kind of better for us. Unless there's a clear break and you can get in behind them and you know that there's a high percentage chance. I think actually like possession Gaelic football, which clearly won't go down well, but there is a large element of, look, if they have 50% possession, we have 50% possession, there's no way we're outscoring them.
Then you're back to Roscommon keeping the ball for 7 minutes against Dublin, aren't you?
But there's no bullying Sean O'Shea or David Clifford anymore. Not that there ever was, because they came in pretty much baked and ready to go as 18 and 19-year-olds back in 2018. So they were very quick to adapt and to get going, both of them. But there's no pushing them around now. So it's tactics and football that is going to outplay them more than anything.
Even if you see the way teams are keeping the ball now, like that's a great example, the Roscommon one against Dublin. But do you remember the number of times, like most of that was back in the Roscommon half. Yeah. And now the thing that teams are doing is they're keeping possession around the arc because they know that all it takes is one player to break out from that line. Because most teams aren't really man-to-man. The players are actually taking a man, but they're not pressing the man. They're kind of squeezing them. And they know that all it takes is one fella to step out of that line too quickly to give you a goal chance. Although it was interesting, I read one of the Roscommon players were saying that they were being coached to actually dive at the foot of the opposition when they were outside the arc, because worst case scenario they get inside the arc then if they sell you the dummy and it's only a 1-pointer. So that's developing as well, you know, how teams defend the arc, because it's such a dominant factor now.
Well, what Donegal and Kerry also have in common is they're off to the Algarve after this round of fixtures for Easter. So Donegal Live reporting, and this was even back kind of rubber stamped at the start of the year. Donegal are going to the Algarve at a cost of €40,000, flying out on Good Friday, and then Kerry are going from Cork to Faro on Easter Monday for a 5-day camp, coinciding with midterm break. So both of them getting away to the sunshine. Is it a chastening day for Mayo at the hands of Kerry? Does that puncture whatever bit of feel good they might have had going under Andy Moran, or no?
It does the nature of the defeat. Now, in fairness, losing to Donegal the way they did that day was chastening enough, but they rebounded. The best way for them to rebound this weekend is obviously to beat Roscommon, who they're almost certainly going to be playing in a Connacht final down the line, sort of in a month's time. But it does still leave the question in your head, if they do win, that, Mayo have beaten everyone else, but they've fallen well short of Kerry and Donegal, who have been the standard bearers in the past year.
Yeah.
I mean, they've been exposed more than once defensively at different stages in the league, and maybe got away with it too. Like, say, the Galway game, even though they were well up that day, they gave up an avalanche of goal chances, and only a few of them were taken. So it's definitely a work in progress. And I think even how he settles on his inside forwards is going to be very interesting the next few weeks. Aidan O'Shea has been only coming off the bench the last few games. I get the sense maybe he's not going to be a starter, which he has been virtually every year since going back to, 2009? Yeah. Cillian O'Connor got a few minutes the last day, but he's played no football at this level for 2 years effectively.
Yeah.
And didn't play a whole lot in the preceding while either there.
33 now.
33, heading for 34. But since he did his accolades in 2021, when he was, I would say, at the peak of his powers, his game time at intercounty level has been very, very disrupted.
Where are you on Mayo?
I think it was a chastening evening in Tralee for them. I think it was sobering. I think the performances, when you put the two performances against Donegal and Kerry together, they outweigh everything else that they have done.
Yeah.
That's my read of it. There was obviously a clamour for more aggressive front foot football, getting away from last year, and obviously the 2-pointers, and we've all referenced and quoted the number of 2-pointers that Mayo scored last year by compared to this year, 3 in 6 championship games. Now they're up to 25, and they're leading the 2-point count in Division 1, but they've also lost 2 games very, very heavily. And that obviously, that risk and reward strategy that they have introduced has been costly, because Kerry just breezed through them, as did Donegal, I felt, with injections of pace and angled running and all of that. So really, they may have to reset, and I think the Mayo public are going to have to obviously accept that the way to play the beautiful game and playing attacking football is all very well, but there was obviously some merit in what the previous management and previous managements were doing with regard to making them difficult to beat, because Mayo beat Kerry in the league last year. That's a matter of record. They also beat Donegal, albeit a Donegal team on the last day of the league that were maybe pulling up the handbrake a little bit. But then they went within a point of Donegal in their last game, their last round robin game. So they were competing with those two teams last year at whatever level it was. But obviously the championship game was full on, and they were a point adrift that day. So to me, against the best two teams, you have to judge against those two teams. And by that token, they have fallen back a bit.
Yeah. There was the sign as well with Kobe's face on it. AFL, hands off Kobe. Breed your own. A visceral. We don't even know the mechanics of it. Like, hands off Kobe was fine, not breed your own. Well, listen, there's been a few signs in Mayo this week. Okay. Then we have the relegation battle. Like, Roscommon are kind of in the middle. They're thereabouts. They're on 8, so they're as much in the mix as Mayo, maybe, depending. They play each other, obviously. And then we're into Galway, Armagh, Dublin, all looking to avoid going down with Monaghan. So Galway, Dublin, I guess, it'll decide direction of travel, as will Armagh against Kerry. I hadn't realised the last time Galway won the National Football League was 1981. Yeah. That's unbelievable. You'd think they'd have picked one up somewhere along the way.
And Pádraig Joyce is one of the few managers who openly state, we would like to win a National League.
Oh, Pádraig Joyce bothered.
Pádraig Joyce not bothered. There's no one bothered, but we would like to, and we are aiming for it, and we are. I won't say they're targeting it, but it's not such an inconvenience.
By the standards of National League managers, that makes him obsessed. This is the holy grail for Pádraig Joyce.
He's too focused on the league.
Yeah,
they can't win the All-Ireland.
Give it a rest with the league, Pádraig.
But it does bring us to what does the league mean to counties? And everyone, I think, of a certain level or a certain ambition wants to get in Division 1.
Yeah.
And then what they want to do is they want to avoid relegation. Winning the league is actually of lesser importance than avoiding relegation.
Who's won the league the last 4 years?
Kerry. Derry,
Well done.
Mayo.
Now you
and
stop
Kerry.
helping these two out a second. McKeon
On
was
a
looking
roll.
at his feet
He was
there.
on a roll.
You forgot Derry beating Dublin.
You didn't have a clue there. You were gone.
That was the
Gone.
day, when
Yeah.
Festival got the final.
You
And they disappeared without trace afterwards for about a year and a half. So that's the curse of the league.
But it depends.
You were in Masters build-up mode there. You
I,
don't-
I think
notion.
it depends on the teams, and like if you look at Kerry, there's something very similar about their profile now to where Dublin were probably in the middle part of the last decade.
Yes, Dublin is 13, 14, 15, 16, 18.
And the things that Dublin did there, like as Frank said, they didn't go out and start the league by hammering everybody.
Sure.
But what they did do very well, and they never kind of spoke about this, if you look at Dublin's record against Mayo and Kerry during those years, they're two main contenders. They beat them nearly every single time. I can remember one game in Killarney that they lost against Kerry, and I can remember that league final in 17. Otherwise, I think it's a clean sweep, maybe for a very fractious draw that there was in Tralee. And like they beat Mayo, whatever it was, like 14 times in a row or something. So Mayo were kind of in that parish. I think that's an interesting dynamic to the game against Armagh on Sunday, because like Armagh are probably a team that if it all comes together could beat them in summer. And I think there'll be a part of Jack O'Connor and a part of Kerry that will consider the kind of benefits of winning away in Armagh to be beyond even getting to a league final. And I just think that's where Kerry are now, because you know, they're good enough to kind of, I don't think that they've rushed anybody back this year. I don't think that they've parked experimentation. I think they've done all those things, yet they're still in the position where they can get to a league final. And that's just a sign of the strength of the group of players they have, where their leaders are, you know, the likes of Sean O'Shea and Clifford, but also, like, you know, Tom O'Sullivan and Gavin White. Those fellas are coming into an absolute prime.
Yeah.
And but also I think the strength of their setup. You know, I've said this loads of times here, but last year I don't think Kerry just had the best team. I think they had the best game plan, and they've since added Kieran Donaghy to their backroom team, and they're playing the rules as well as any team out there. So I think if you throw it all in together, I think that kind of points towards Kerry being favourites to go on just to win it now.
Yeah. Well, Galway, like I said, have Dublin 3:30, TG Cahir on Sunday. I presume it's Sunday.
Sunday, yeah.
It's Sunday.
Hurling Saturday football.
They're all at the same time as well. They have
Yes,
to be.
of
We have
course.
to-
I like the Six Nations.
Galway last day out without Shane Walsh, Matthew Thompson, Killian McDade and Damien Comer against Monaghan. Rob Trinity scored 8 points. Paul Conroy had two great 2-pointers to seal the result. Interestingly, you know, you're making that point, Frank, about Donegal attacking too aggressively. The thing Pork Joyce highlighted after the game was turnovers. We turned the ball over 25 times today. That's far too high. So maybe there's a theme there in what they're cognizant of in terms of keeping possession. Meanwhile, Dublin losing 11-point lead against Armagh. And Ger Brennan afterwards says some of his players need to do a bit of, quote, soul searching. He said, you can have all these wonderful structures and different choreographed plays, whether it's kickouts and whatnot, but when someone is putting their teeth into you, that's when you'd like to see your guys step up and show a bit of leadership. Some of our newer guys, it'll be a good learning for them, having not played at this level before, to have felt that pressure from Armagh. But some of our older lads, again, bit of soul searching to do now in terms of what happened in that second half against Armagh. It was a systems failure in the end. So every few weeks he says about the Owl lads, I'm going to cut you. I swear to God, I'm done. He's definitely publicly anyway given the elder statesman the bulk of the criticism.
Is he implying himself some criticism for himself by saying there's a systems failure?
I don't know. No, I think he's saying.
that was the first.
You boys didn't actually carry it out, and you know, at a certain point, systems, it doesn't matter. You got to show a bit of fight. That's how I interpret. I definitely think he was. I don't think he was saying my systems were at fault, kind of thing.
Liam Racine, your job.
Yeah. What's he doing?
He's always saying it's on me when the goalkeeper.
Well, if we see the Dublin players gather in a huddle around the ball and
Respect
the
it.
throne, yeah, we're nowhere in bother.
No,
I can't quite figure out where Dublin are at. Now I was watching the game on TV last Saturday.
When they were good, they were very good.
They were like, it was a cracking watch. Now we were all in a good mood. Like, we'd watched you on TV, watched the rugby, moved on to Mayo, Kerry, which wasn't so exciting. But the Dublin Armagh game was a great watch. And what Dublin produced in the first half was up there with the best they've delivered under Brennan. It possibly was better than, I wasn't at the Roscommon game, but I mean, that was a different type of...
Yeah, with that last Saturday was probably a faster game than that was.
Yeah.
Croke Park obviously plays faster, and Armagh, with some of the players that they have, go at a higher pitch than almost anyone, maybe bar Donegal, even ahead of Kerry sometimes. Armagh can really, really really go at a team at pace. They have some of the quickest ball carriers in the game. So,
And what Armagh suffered, or sorry, what Dublin suffered against Armagh was similar to what Mayo suffered for a spell against Armagh a week or two before that. What Roscommon suffered against them for periods in the game, where Armagh lost those 2 matches. But this time, Armagh went full chokehold on the Dublin kickout for the last, whatever it was, 15, 20 minutes. And Dublin had no answer. And so, like, they've won 2 games out of 6. One of those wins was against Monaghan, where they were lucky enough probably to get the points. So we're just seeing bits and pieces of Dublin, and we're not too sure what we're going to see next. And that, in many ways, is what Dublin were like last summer.
And just one quick follow-up. Sorry, who was good for Dublin in attack when they were humming?
Well, the bits I saw, I mean, Bugler, Scully, Luke Brannock, he went off injured. Paddy Small had a, yeah.
Luke Brannock went off with a shoulder injury in the second half. He had scored 4 first half points, and then he goes off, and that's part of the fracture. Brian Howard is sent off. Brian Howard was actually going okay. I would say that's nearly among the best games he has played after a slow start to the league. But Brannock was a loss. There's no doubt that it heaved a little bit of momentum from them. But I think just Armagh, and nearly after Armagh conceded a free because of the half-time altercation, and Kieran McGeaney had words with David Goff, and under the new rules that's a free to start. So instead of a throw-up, it was a 13-metre free for Dublin. That put them 11 points up, didn't it?
That put them 10, and then Dublin got the 11. Next one.
And then Armagh really went at them. So their back was up after that. And maybe Joe Brennan has a point that a lot of experienced players should be able to stall that momentum, that Armagh momentum in some way, and they didn't. And
the thing about it is,
overwhelmed.
Dublin in the first half played their best attacking football since the start of the rules. It was the first time they actually looked like they understood it, or that they were at least set up to try and maximise what you do. And Niall Scully carried the ball extraordinarily well. Paddy Small was a threat from outside, then he'd shimmy inside. Brannock was going well. I think it was the best football Dublin have played in a couple of years. And it's the sort of football that over the last couple of years, when the players have retired, we wondered whether the quality was still there for them to be able to play at that level. But their big failing in the second half was like physical and possibly even psychological. They were blown out of it. They couldn't win their own kick out. And when it all started to go against them, there was nobody, or maybe not that there wasn't one person, but they didn't have the collective mentality to figure out how to stop it. And like, their failings that you wouldn't have said about Dublin for a long, long time. Like, they were the first things that they conquered before they started to get really talented players in again. So it's a different dynamic, and it's hard because, like, they've played 2 goalkeepers. I think have they played 3 each? Evan Comerford and Hugh O'Sullivan. And there are periods when they've been hammered on kickouts. Most teams have, but my sense of Dublin is they've endured more damaging periods than most other players. And it can be hard in the kick out to find out what's at fault here. You know, like, is the kick going to the right place? Should this guy be running back towards his own goal? Like, is it always on the part of the person who's trying to receive the ball? Are you picking the right targets? And you can't really figure it out, but it's extraordinary that they couldn't find a way. I think they lost 7 of their last 9 kickouts.
It's interesting the way Brennan kind of frames that. And it would kind of tally with McGeaney and look, it's just piggery, where he says whether it's kickouts or whatnot, but when kickouts, when someone's putting their teeth into you, that's where you'd like to see your guys step up and just show a bit more leadership. So he's kind of almost being dismissive of, quote, these wonderful structures and choreographed BS is what he's kind of saying. He's almost saying, listen, at a certain point, the way the kickouts are, there's not much I can do for you fellas.
That's exactly what it is. I can
give you the plays. It's like, is someone going to step up? That's quite unsatisfactory analysis in some way, because it's so cliched. It's like back to the days of borderline who wants it more, and it's almost what McGeaney hates about the new rules, that there is this.
You're looking at Dublin today and you're thinking, like, what would they do for Paul Flynn? Of all the players that ever played for Dublin, somebody who could get to a broken kick out and accelerate onto the ball, take a hit, spin out of it and shift it off. That's just what Dublin are badly lacking now. They need somebody to be able to break the ball in midfield.
The old Cluxton, Brian Howard dynamic that worked so well that when they were in bother, Stephen Cluxton would pop the ball out to the number 5 position, the right half back, the conventional right half back position. And so many games, including All-Ireland finals, that was their outball to get it away. And now they can't affect that in the same way. Obviously, there's less of the field for an opposition to cover. But you would still expect Brian Howard should be able to make that run. I would expect him. He's such a good fielder of the ball and so intelligent with his runs, but that hasn't been happening. And obviously, Cluxton has missed from that point of view.
Were Armagh winning the ball clean, or were they just picking up all the breaks?
Bit of both.
It's both, yeah.
Right.
Perfect
Yeah.
piggery, Joe. It was perfect piggery.
Well,
It was
piggery, it's impressive.
I would suggest
Some
that,
very fine cuts.
Yeah, I would suggest that Geezer's analogy with piggery is he's not letting on everything he knows, because Armagh are among the best teams at going after an opposition kick out, and that can't be just all about, we wanted it more.
I think Blaine Hughes retained something like 82% of his own kickouts. Like so as far as I can make out, somebody had the stat that Armagh are breaking 50-50 on opposition kickouts all league, and they're retaining over 70% of their own.
They're actually piggery leaders.
Yeah.
But is there not some argument, like, back at Brennan saying, okay, the team aren't standing up and leadership is deficit and all that, but so say you're under the cosh with a kick out, what's really interesting now is going to be to see which teams can fight their way out of it. So obviously, look, a Howard Cluxton option would be lovely, but in real terms, surely you would just set things up that you have numbers around an area, and it just means, okay, even if we lose this ball, they're not getting out of here easy. You know what I mean? You think of Kerry versus Armagh in the semi-final last year. That was like one Armagh Kerry player wins a ball, and it's like, I'm almost shooting. Whereas, can you not box them in and make it more difficult for Armagh?
The way Dublin played it last year in Cluxton's final year, and it did work quite well for them, was the exact opposite. Was that they positioned all their players in their own zones and spread them out. So basically, you had a series of one-on-ones at the pitch, and then they picked whichever one-on-one they fancied winning most. Now, invariably last year it was Padder O'Cuffy Byrne, or it was Brian Howard. And that seems to be what they're kind of doing at the moment. There doesn't seem to be any great science behind it. But I just do wonder, like you said that man's name, Stephen Cluxton, I find it hard to believe that a team that Stephen Cluxton is a member of the back room don't have sort of bigger plans than that. And maybe they're not fully.
I think there's been great innovation around kickouts to the sidelines and players running up along the sideline. I saw Donegal execute a few of those, and player on the move, literally parallel on the white line of the sideline on the way up, and connections and some of the shorter kickouts. If you look at the All-Ireland final last year, how Kerry got short kickouts away. Now, they were primarily targeting, I think, Michael Murphy. But they got them away. They got possession. There are innovations around there. I think maybe keepers are a little bit afraid of delaying too long because it's a free in. That may be in the back of their mind. So things are a little bit hurried. But I think that the keeper that goes right up to the time limit will get something away.
The interesting dynamic is when you're under the cosh, when you've lost 5 in a row. That's kind of the really curious one.
I heard a good example.
Very hard to turn around.
I heard a good example at club level of a team positioning all their players in their own half of the pitch, but had to tell the referee beforehand that the law states that you're only in breach of the 3-up rule when the ball is in play. So they put all their players in their own half of the pitch. The opposition have 3 players back in the half on their own with their hands up, roaring and shouting to the linesman. And then as the keeper runs up, they look over and the pod that has nobody near them, they go back into the other half and they've got 3 spare players there. So there's innovation. It can work, but you wouldn't try it too often.
Just one curiosity about this weekend's game. If you hark back to last year when Meath famously defeated Dublin in Leinster, and it was Stephen Cluxton for once came under ferocious pressure in the first 10 minutes, especially that game. They lost nearly every kick out, in that period. Yeah. And Dublin backs were to the wall. People were doubting them like they hadn't doubted them for 15 years. And their next game, as it turned out, was away to Galway in Salthill in their first round-robin match. And it was probably Dublin's, if not their best, definitely their most defiant display of last year. Kieran Kilkenny was sensational that day. So they're not under the cosh like that. They're not being doubted to the same level, or it's only the league, we'll say now. But they are going to Salthill and they need a result.
Galway are in 6, Armagh 4, Dublin 4. So obviously if Dublin beat Galway, they go to 6 as well. And when it's just 2 teams on 6 or on the same number of points, then it's head to head. So Dublin would stay up, albeit if Armagh are beaten by Kerry, then they'd be in trouble should Dublin win. So it's all kind of nicely balanced. Who was it most damaging to get relegated? Galway, Armagh, Dublin? Is it overly damaging for anyone really in the grand scheme of things? Is it a disaster? Does it derail vibes for the summer, or is it not too big a deal?
I'd say Dublin could do without it. Just particularly the fact that they've a new manager, they've a few new players.
He's made a big play of it not being the priority though, and he's used lots of players. Like, he'd have that out, wouldn't he?
No, I think going down would be a bad look for Dublin now. Just at the stage of their development, they've lost in the last 2 years in All Ireland quarterfinals, and before that you'd have to go back to 2009. So like the sense of decay is very obvious there. And whatever anybody says, like the last couple of games as it's happened, I've been in Croke Park to see Dublin. Meath have played in the previous game, and if you sort of anonymised everybody out there and said which of the teams are better. Now, this might not sort of extrapolate into Leinster into summer, but at the moment, there's no doubt that Meath are kind of playing better football, albeit in Division 2. So, like, if Dublin were to go down and then not win Leinster, like, imagine we were having this conversation this time last year. It was easier to envisage the end of the world than the end of Dublin's dominance.
Dublin won the All-Ireland title in 2023.
Yeah, but they had all the players. That's the point.
And Armagh won it in 2024 from Division 2. It seems a lot this week. And then when it's done, it's over. And the teams move on very, very quickly from this. So it's not the guillotine we think it is by any stretch. Probably a little bit harmful for Ger Brennan in his first year, because you always expect a new management bounce. And so far they've only got it in trickles. So probably a little bit more damaging for them. But they're well used to certainly the counties are used to having been down there in recent times and prospering with it. So it's not that big a deal.
As a long-suffering Spurs fan, I can safely say that it would be a lot more damaging for us to go down than any of those three there. The other thing is they all, like, Dublin went straight back up, Armagh went straight back up, I think, when they were relegated. Yeah. Galway were relegated, I think, during COVID times and went straight back up. So, I mean, you don't want to get in the habit of staying down there.
Sure. Yeah,
I think
maybe that's the point.
I think it'd be more for the moment itself. Like, say Dublin were to hang on last week against Armagh after playing brilliant football in the first half. They would have had 2 wins in a row where they played some really, really strong football. And then going into this weekend, they could nearly do what they want to do. And from where that leaves you, starting your preparation to Leinster versus where you'd be starting your preparation for Leinster if you lost and got relegated, I just think that I think there is a bit of a difference there. It's not nothing.
I think there's a mental test, the psychological test for Dublin going down to Galway this weekend to go and get something out of it. Even a win may not be enough for them. They might, because if Armagh beat Kerry and 3 teams are...
It's points difference.
And it's points difference. And they may not have the points. They may not win by enough. But I think if they went and won that game, it would be... they'd take something from it.
They'd have to win by 4 to go ahead of Galway in points difference. So 4-point win potentially should Armagh win. Dublin would need in Galway. But that'd be a result. Okay, that's Division 1. We'll take a short break and go through the other divisions. Colm Keys, Frank Roche and Conor McKeon still here. So just briefly to mention the other 3 divisions. We can't go through everything in granular detail, but in Division 2, Cork and Meath are on 10 points apiece, and then you have Louth and Derry chasing them down on 8 points apiece. Kildare, well, Offaly are going down. Kildare, Cavan, Tyrone could all go down. That is Division 2. Division 3 then, Down are the only team already in a final. They're on 12 points, and so you've got Westmeath and Wexford hoping to join them. Limerick, Fermanagh, Sligo looking at relegation. And Division 4 is insane, really, because the difference from first spot to second bottom is 2 points. So basically everybody bar Waterford could end up in a Division 4 final. So that is wide open. 2 points separating first and second bottom of 8 teams in Division 4. Just mentioning Meath there, Conor. You said you're at Croke Park, obviously, and you watched Meath against Tyrone.
Tyrone last week, yeah.
Meath had 8 2-pointers in that game, which is fairly phenomenal. And we were just chatting off air. You were saying you really feel now, looking at Meath, they are going to hit you up at a different level. Yeah, you're not saying the absolute top table, but they've moved through the gears here as a team.
It's funny, I remember last year, after the first couple of weeks of the league, Robbie Brennan was one of the most vocal campaigners against them. He was talking about the big swings and...
It's not football,
It's not football, yeah. And since then, I think Meath have become maybe the best team out there in terms of just having the players to... Like, they've got some big guys around the middle of the park. They've got some really, really beautiful kickers at the ball. And the age profile of the squad is quite young as well.
Who's the best team in Leinster at the moment?
I'd say it's probably Meath.
Colm?
On current form, Meath, but I still think Dublin will be the team to beat and are the team to beat. If they get everybody out Joe, if they get their best team out, they're going to be hard to beat in Leinster, albeit the gap has definitely closed. That's acknowledged. And Louth are coming fast. And Louth have players coming through off that under-20 squad from last year. Some of them are coming through now. A very good under-20 team this year again. So over the midterm, I think we'll see a very, very strong challenge from Louth in Leinster and beyond.
Should be great.
Like Dublin would still put out a team with about 150 All Ireland medals in it or something. Like you can't
They get everybody
like,
right.
Like you can't take that away. But it's just, it seems like such a sort of an effort to kind of get everybody on the pitch, get them fit, and kind of figure out, because the amount of players who've kind of come in and gone out in the last 2 or 3 years to kind of build the next great team or build the next team of any description, and there aren't too many players who have actually become mainstays of the team and then become kind of leaders in the team. You're still looking at the fellas who are not the leftovers, but say the younger fellas who were around in 2019 when they were winning 5 in a row. They're the mainstays of the team. So, like, I would agree that if Dublin have everybody on the pitch, they're a match for anybody. But it's just they haven't really managed to do that the last couple of years. So I'm not sure you can say for certain that they will.
The interesting thing is what Colm mentions, Louth, and like they had a poorish start to the league. You know, they were in danger of being sucked into a relegation battle, but they are the team with as much momentum as anyone in the league. And like Gavin Devlin has really got them playing really good football. They've beaten Tyrone, hammered Cavan, and then beaten Derry when nobody really saw it coming last weekend. And the way the table is, it's almost impossible for them to be promoted. But they're going to be going into the Leinster Championship in a very positive frame of mind, I would imagine. And like, you know, when they won that famous Leinster title last year, people weren't talking about, oh, let's go back to back. But they've actually, their form has improved in this year's league compared to how they finished out last year's championship. I mean, after Leinster, they kind of, you know, they went out with a bit of a whimper, like in the All-Ireland series.
I have them as having a good chance. Maybe I got the maths wrong here, but they're on 8 points to Cork and Meath on 10. They have Kildare. Say, let's give them 2 points there, for example, and their points difference is better than Cork. Cork are away at Tyrone. If Tyrone beat Cork at home, that'd be Louth and Cork on 10 points apiece. So Louth then would usurp Cork, no?
They're done on the head-to-head.
But that depends on
Cork and Meath.
If 3 teams,
And
if 3 teams. It's sorry. Go ahead, Frank.
I think Derry. I mean, Derry's last game is home to Cavan. If Derry win that, and if one of the top 2 falter, Derry are in the box seat because their scoring difference
42.
is so far ahead.
Derry have 42.
Blame Cork.
Yeah, they destroyed
Oh my
Cork with
goodness.
20 points.
42 points difference. Okay. So Derry then. Fair enough. I take your point on Louth. But look, I guess the point is they're thereabouts. They're right in the mix.
They're right in the mix, and they weren't, a few weeks ago. But I like we were talking about who are the contenders in Leinster. The sad bit is what's happened Kildare in the last few weeks.
We're just waiting in the long grass. Don't worry about
Well,
us. It's all fine.
The robot mower isn't working at the moment anyway.
What is your sense of Kildare? 3 points, minus 20 points differential. Second from bottom. It's a good job they're Tailteann Cup champions, or they wouldn't be in.
Well,
I wonder whether that formed part of Brian Flanagan's thinking, because they were a very, very young team last year, and he made them noticeably younger this year. Like the day that they went up to Tyrone and drew, I think they might have had 5 or 6 intercounty debutants in a team that already had a handful of players. Mostly players who only had a handful of senior appearances. So I just wonder whether the fact that they were guaranteed a spot in this year's All-Ireland series and the Leinster Championship might have influenced that a small bit. But I haven't seen too many of their games, so I don't know why they've gone
Going
out.
back down, Conor, to Division 3, that's not really a great pathway for a team in development like that. I think to hang on and survive Division 2 is obviously the best option. We talk about, it's not going to be such a big deal for Dublin and Armagh to drop out of Division 1 because very, very strong chance they're going to be back up. Whereas if Kildare go down to Division 3 for the second time in a few years, it's going to be difficult for them to get back up or even have the drive. Now, it is a new team, a lot of change there, and a very encouraging first night out against Tyrone to get a draw and then to kick on and beat Offaly and be leading against Derry. But they really have faltered since then. I mean, to lose to Cavan, they're really poor against Meath, and physically I feel they're in deficit.
Well, to continue a theme, I don't think you could say that Brian Flanagan would be not that bothered if Kildare were relegated.
Yeah.
Because of, he'd be going into year 3 as manager, and you're having to kind of lift them again from that base. I mean, the wheels seem to have come off from half time against Derry. You know, they were in a position to win that game. They'd faced the Gale. I think they were ahead by a few points at half time, went 5 up, and from then on it's gone badly wrong. And now they did create a lot of chances late on against Cork. I know they lost by 9 in the end. You know, it could have been a lot closer, but it was still a third defeat on the spin. And I was researching a piece last week on it, and when I just went looking, like an awful lot of the under 20 team that won the All Ireland in 2023 had started their previous game. I think 5 and 2 come off the bench. So there's a lot of guys from that age cohort. But like Kildare won an All Ireland under 20 in 2018. It's not that long ago.
Yeah.
They beat Mayo in the final, and that Mayo team included Ryan O'Donoghue and Jordan Flynn, who are now mainstays of that Mayo team.
Should be at their peak, really.
And there's barely anyone from Kildare still involved. I think is Brian McLaughlin. I think might be the only starter. So, you know, they didn't build enough on that, and now they're with the retirements they had over the winter. There isn't a whole lot of battle-hardened experience in that group.
Okay.
A lot rested on Kevin Feely for sure, and he was missing from the game that they lost against Cavan. So when he's out, a little bit like Conor O'Callaghan, there's an absence of leadership there, perhaps.
Tyrone are probably fine in mid-table in Division 2, beaten by by Meath rather last day. They have Cork at home this weekend. What's going on with Tyrone? Like when they're in the mood, obviously they can just get it together very, very quickly. The early signs are they're not in the mood this year.
Yes, I suppose you look to Dara Canavan pitching to go to Australia for a month in the middle of a league campaign, and well, that's all very holistic and all of that. I thought it was a strange decision that a player would uproot and go. Maybe he had to rehabilitate an injury. He didn't get going, as it happens, because of events in the Middle East. I think he went to America instead, and he came off the bench last, so he missed no game, and he came off the bench last Saturday evening. I think no Dara Canavan, no Darren McCurry, no Owen McElholm, who's the under-20 young player of the year from last year. I think put those three into their forward line and they're all together a better team. But they have been labouring. Niall Morgan hasn't featured in the last couple of games. I'm not even sure was he part of the squad last weekend. And I think around the middle 8 they probably have. There's probably a size issue there, a physical issue there, even though they have Brian Kennedy and Con Kilpatrick, which is a very seasoned and very hardened midfield pairing. I think around that is probably miss Peter Hart a little bit too for the cameos that he would have produced for them. I get a sense that interest in Tyrone towards inter-county teams in general is not as high as it should be. It's a very, very club-focused county. Club championship, they may not produce All-Ireland club winners, but it is maybe arguably the most competitive club championship at senior, intermediate and junior. And you look at the crowds that have been at their All-Ireland under-20 and minor finals, and they're not very big, 1,500, 2,000, and obviously that they're playing Kerry in some of those games. If that was any other county, they'd be travelling en masse to those games. They don't travel. Even some of the attendances at Healy Park in Omagh for their home games haven't been great. Now, obviously, big crowd went to the All-Ireland semi-final last year, but for those more routine games, and even for All-Ireland underage finals, they haven't been getting the crowds. Does that permeate down into the team that maybe there's just a little bit of the absence of love for everything inter-county Tyrone may not be as strong as what it is in other counties? Having said all that, I think they'll beat Cork on Sunday. I'm not sure Cork travel all that well to go back to our original, but the results against Ulster teams, and while the new rules, and you can see it with Meath and Louth, Meath hadn't beaten Tyrone since 2007 in a game, but they come up against them with a new set of rules. Louth are the same. They would have traditionally struggled against those type of teams that put up those defensive ramparts. So maybe it changes in that regard for Cork. But I think there has to be a response from Tyrone after last weekend. I think they get Canavan, McElholm and McCurry all back in a little bit earlier, and I think they win that.
I think Niall Morgan kind of transforms Tyrone a small bit as well. I know it's the great cliche, the goalkeeper is the playmaker or the quarterback, but he literally is, and he's kind of the leader of that team, particularly now that Peter Hart has kind of gone out of it.
Where is he? Just injured?
Well, he hasn't been there, so I just assume so. Yeah, but he's like particularly like Patrick and Brian Kent, like they were an All Ireland winning midfield pairing,
Yeah.
and they were nobody's idea of an All Ireland winning midfield pairing before the new rules. Since the new rules, what they give you in midfield, particularly with a really, really good weapon. Because the other thing about the kick out, to go back to that and the new kind of parameters, is if you have a boomer, like if you have the ability to fly the ball an extra 20 metres, it means the opposition has to set up, it's stretched
Yeah.
by 20 metres.
Can't press in the same way.
Yeah, and if you create that separation and you have big players who can win their battles against opposition, it's going to get you a lot of ball. And there's too much talented forwards in Tyrone for it not to happen.
So let me not rush to say then they're not in the mood this year.
The only thing I'd say is actually, in a way, it's a continuation of their form last season. They got to an All Ireland semi-final, and you think, God, they must have been playing consistently well to do that. Their form tended to lurch from one extreme to another right the way through. I mean, they beat, was it Donegal? No, let me see.
Donegal in the
beat
first
Donegal in
round
first round,
robin game.
and you're thinking, wow.
And then lost to Mayo.
Lost badly to Mayo. Rebounded. Then I can't remember. They did a poor game going in, and then they played Dublin and beat them, and then didn't really put up a sustained fight against Kerry in the All Ireland semi-final. So they were kind of going from game to game. There was no vein of consistency in what they were producing.
I think Morgan is a big factor. You mentioned Morgan Conor. He's a huge factor. Any of those goalkeepers that can clear.
Same with Patton.
If you look at the Mayo game, the point that put Mayo out at the death in Roscommon last year, Kieran Moore, that was a Patton kick out that went way into the Mayo half of the field, cleared everybody, and there was open space for Kieran Moore. So it's a huge advantage.
Sean Patton will be out for a while yet, from what I gather. He was in the back row of the stand in Hyde Park last Sunday, just in front of the press box. I didn't even twig him there. One of the reporters said, "That's Sean Patton there," but he's going to be out for several more weeks, I think.
Sean Patton is reported to have had surgery on something to correct an issue that's been ongoing. It could be championship before he's back.
Okay. Division 4, like I said, 12 points down there. That's Division 3, excuse me. 12 points down. The rest are all in with a chance right the way down to Westmeath, Wexford Clare, and Division 4 is just crazily tight. Carlow 8 points, Wicklow 8 points, right the way down to Leitrim 6 points. That is unusual, isn't it? That 2 points separating first, seventh. That's particularly condensed. Yeah.
That was thrown open. London came to Carlow last weekend, and Carlow were flying, albeit they'd lost their previous game, but they'd won the first 4. And then they lost to London, and that has really thrown it open.
Right.
And that's London have now accumulated 7 points, and that's their highest ever since the division in the league that we know it, since 2008. So they're, for the first time ever, again, since 2008, since the current format was put into place, they're actually challenging for promotion. They've never been in this position before.
Okay. And a moment of thought for Waterford football fans. 6 games, 6 losses, minus 50 points. They're on 0 points. Everyone else on a minimum of 6. That's dire situation, isn't it?
They won't be relegated, or they can't be relegated.
No.
That's about their only good news.
Yeah, but
it's actually interesting. Division 3 is lovely to have a straightforward division compared to Division 4, because down or up, but Wexford are playing Westmeath
so
on
that
Sunday.
settles it. Okay.
So basically, whoever wins that goes up.
Yeah.
And if it's a draw, Westmeath go up because their scoring difference is slightly better. But at least it's, there's
Clear cut.
It's pretty clear cut.
Who's been your player of the league so far?
I'll go for Enda Smith, just because
Enda Smith.
he's just a player that I can't get enough of watching. Like, there's something very... I was talking to a defender recently who marked him back in the day, and he was kind of saying, when Roscommon were playing a lot of slow ball, he was looking at Enda Smith thinking, these Roscommon are doing themselves out of a lot of goals here if they just got it in early to him, because he has an amazing ability to just take on a run, and even if you're blocking one of his foot, he'll kick it kind of straight foot. And Roscommon have been brilliant, bar that game against Dublin when they just bizarrely couldn't get to the pitch of it. That was nearly like Cork's performance against Derry. Like, it's a complete sort of misnomer from the rest of their league campaign. But I think Enda Smith has been absolutely brilliant.
Frank?
I can't go at end, obviously, but I will say the last 15 minutes last Sunday, he was fantastic, because they were playing into that gale and they were under serious pressure, and he, more than any player, dug that victory out for Roscommon.
You were right
I
behind
think
that,
his
Kobe. You were right behind that, Kobe.
Kobe gave me moment of the league without a doubt. I think Dermot Murtagh wouldn't be far off it. I mean, he's Roscommon's all-time leading scorer, but he has kept delivering game after game. Bar maybe the Dublin one didn't go so well that day. But himself and Dara Craig have been the twin terrors for Roscommon this year. Dara Craig didn't go so well last weekend, but Dermot Murtagh came up with first goal, as he's been doing routinely. Brilliantly set up the second goal that won the match for them for Conor Hand. I'd probably go him. I mean, you could pick Sean O'Shea, you could pick David Clifford, but I think maybe one of the Rossies.
I'm going to pick Sean O'Shea or David Clifford. I'm throwing to the front.
You're a blue blood.
I'm throwing
How
to the
unoriginal.
throwing to the front of the line out here. I think David Clifford is, and as he often has been the player of the league, because we judge him by his own standards.
He has to score 5 for one end of Smith.
It's Joe Canning stuff.
Yeah.
So I think after that, I mentioned Sean O'Shea's performance in Donegal and last Saturday as well have been right up there. And just to sweep around, Clifford is my player of the year, marginally ahead of Oisín O'Neill. Has been very good for Armagh. Finbar Rorty has impressed me, and Michael Langan at times, and Jason McGee. That's a lot of names, but I'm putting the golden duo 1 and 2, I think, here.
Sean O'Shea has created a new conundrum for us. Where these new rules came in, and we're trying to figure out how do we represent the new scoring regime in the stats. You know, when we're listing our scorers.
Yeah.
And I got a telling off there from the bosses during the week saying I'd reverted to TP. You know, if a guy got 2 TP, whatever, because no, it should be 2P, the number.
Yeah.
But now we've got Sean O'Shea last Saturday, and he produced 2 point from play off the ground, and I'm not too sure how we should represent that when it comes, because it was just.
I think
surreal.
that's a first.
Oh, without a
I
doubt.
haven't heard of anybody who has swept the ball off the carpet from over 40 metres out. It was an incredible strike.
It's a joke.
Jack O'Connor likened it to a golf shot, it was a windy course he was playing, because he bent it round, he hooked it round. It was
Even the late draw, like you could see it, you're just like, this is perfect. It's only drawn at the last minute. Like, talk about somebody who's like such a master of kicking the ball. I know it's only slightly rolling, but like, you have to adjust your feet. You have the calculation you have to make, and to get that strike in.
Also, must have a millisecond of shit. Am I able to do this? You just must have a second of, I think I'm doing it. You know. Even
and then he remembered, I'm from Kerry. Course I can do it. Like,
yeah,
you know.
Yeah.
I have to say the football has been great. I think
Has it? Yeah.
It really has.
I have not. I must say it's killed me this year with Six Nations stuff, different stuff. I've not seen enough of this league.
My only gripe with this is that the weather is such a, like, I know that the weather is going to be a factor. That's inevitable. GA pitches are built in such a way that they're very windswept. It's one end to the other, but I do think there's cause. I know Kevin McStay has been lined up to be the head of this advisory committee, and I do wonder whether there's some kind of scope to look at the game and say maybe quarters is the way to go here, so that both teams get a blast of the win in the first half. Because, like, you have a situation where you're talking about at halftime, will 12 points be enough?
Yeah.
And it's kind of bonkers. And the thing about it is that the FRC's rules have already generated the environment for big comebacks anyway, because there's 2 pointers, you can't time waste anymore, there's the solo and go. But it's just so artificially sort of driven now by the wind, and it's almost like a cricket game. Like, you win the toss, you choose the bat, and then the halftime declares for you, and then you kind of you dig in for dear life. So that's my only gripe. But the number of excellent games, like top class games, and the sort of like, you know, the whole idea of the new rules, and maybe we should just start calling them the rules. But the idea was that we would get to see the best of Gaelic football, and every week we're seeing stuff like Sean O'Shea or Tom O'Sullivan, and like, there's just brilliant stuff happening the whole time. And it's not so long ago since we were all sort of sitting around quietly sullen about whatever the recent match was that finished 8-6. So it's some change.
Yeah,
I can see you making Kevin McStay's committee after that intervention, Conor. I think I'm going to nominate you.
The other thing they've done is that even matches where technically maybe the standard isn't the best, you still get totally wrapped up in them, you know, because the rules have lent themselves to a level of drama and, you know, madcap transformations and all that, you know, it mightn't be the best game, but it was a brilliant game. It was a great watch. Like, Dublin Kerry is the only game, I think, this year where I was genuinely bored watching it. Everyone else has been something on it.
Really, Alice?
I met a former Dublin
great
player on
return.
Saturday night, and we were saying, Jesus, the rules are brilliant. We haven't seen a bad game. And he said, oh, Dublin Kerry was a bad game.
That's some going if that's the only bad game.
Soon enough, we'll be giving out that there's too many scores.
Yeah, I
That's
know.
only around the corner,
It's
isn't
coming,
it?
yeah. It's too free flowing.
No. Right, fellas, that is a great recap as we head towards the final weekend. We are bothered here. Conor McKeon, thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Frank, thanks very much.
Thank you, Joe.
Colm, thank you.
Thanks, Joe.